Welcome to the Honest Mamas podcast, where we talk about the emotional and spiritual aspects of the motherhood journey. We are a team of honest mamas. Myself, Melissa, Sophie, and Claire. We are psychotherapists, moms, and friends. Join us as we get real about the topics that matter to you. Hey mamas, welcome to episode 18 of the Honest Mamas podcast. This is Melissa, and today I have the privilege of having a great chat with Brahmani. Today we talk about self-love and compassion on the motherhood journey, and we also talk about fear and finding your true ground and your voice. Please join us for today's conversation. Hi Brahmani, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Melissa. Well, it is really a delight, and I think what you're doing here is a really wonderful thing for new moms.
Oh,
so thank you for including me.
Absolutely. Yeah. You were one of the top people when we decided to start a podcast that came to mind. Brahmani and I have had some experience in working together. She was my level 2 and 3 Reiki Master teacher, and also started going to a small meditation group with her at her home, which, by the way, I so miss. Brahmani ended up moving to California, but I so miss that group.
Yeah, I miss that group too. Actually, Melissa, is not something that I'm not reproducing my East Coast life out here. While it's rich and full, there are those missing moments. So thank you for that. I'm happy to be connected with you in this way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the process of a mom finding herself again after having children. You know, it's one thing before you become a mother to sort of walk on the path of spirituality, self-knowing. And then I truly believe, not only through my own experience, but working with a lot of moms, that so much changes when you become a mother. And sometimes we're not even aware of it until time goes on.
Right.
And so today, what I thought would be really helpful for some of our listeners, just for us to chat about, is internal knowing and how you sort of tap back into internal knowing, your intuition, how to really find yourself after having a baby and going through all of that. So maybe we can start, Brahmani, once we dive in, to maybe you sharing a little bit about your own experience and sort of how, kind of what, maybe start with what internal knowing actually is.
That's great. And I love this conversation because I've been teaching for a lot of years, and my teaching really is about sharing what's happened in my life, what works in my life, what I've learned, and practices that support that. And I recognize that while I'm teaching yoga and training teachers and a Reiki master and meditation, the truth is that they're all really tools to help me to come back home to a place that feels whole and quiet and at peace and a sense of knowing. So they're tools, but that's it. Like every tool, every practice is about helping one to have an experience of themselves, right? And it really was when I think I have to go back even longer than that. When I was a child, a very young child, I had a near-death experience.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
I know, as I'm saying that, I'm like, we didn't get to talk about that one. And I often forget about that one, but it's true. And when I really think about it, it's like, that's what happened for you. There was I got sick. I was taken to the hospital. I actually died on the table. They brought me back. And, then I know. And then later on, and I came back and life was different. I felt more seen in my family. I felt accepted in my family. I felt like I had my family in a different way. So looking back at that. But, when I later on years, I worked with psychics and so what is the deeper meaning of this? And, I was told, and it feels right, that, you were shown that this was not your time to go, that you had work to do in this world. And it seems that's true. But the work is really to trust, to know who I am, and then to share that with others and help others know who they are.
I think that's definitely one thing that I pick up, and anyone who's listening who's ever had the pleasure of, being in contact with Brahmani and even chats we've had on the phone, you're just such a loving, kind presence, and you're very calm. And I think people really get that from you when you're around.
I thank you for that. And of course, I want to say that I really appreciate that. And of course, human, like everyone else, you know how they say, if you think you're enlightened, go home for the weekend.
With your family.
That's right. You know, not always but that's great because they're my great teachers. So I just want to be as transparent as possible here.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. So like, I appreciate that. And I think that's true for all of us. The fact is that we, if we're not with those who will trigger us, we can be our best selves, And isn't that great? Because the more we do that, the more we build that muscle of who we really are. And, bit by bit, we remember when we get triggered that there's another way to be. And so, that's a lifelong journey. Yeah.
Totally.
But going back to, that inner knowing, it really is. I said this to you before we began, but I thought about that, and I know that that's a thing that I encourage people. So like life really is an experiment. It was that phrase was coined by a great Tibetan teacher. Like live your life as if it's an experiment, and because we all get a sense, and you know it, Melissa. There are moments in your life when you're like, you just know what's right for you, or you know something that's true for you. And sometimes you follow it and sometimes you don't.
Right.
And there's even a moment when I know I have these moments where we think something's going to happen, but we don't listen to it. And then all of a sudden something happens. You're like, I knew that was going to happen. It didn't seem important. Can you relate to that?
Absolutely. 1,000%.
1,000%. So it's learning to listen more and more to those small moments. And, there's one way, like for me through the years, when someone's talking to me and I get a sense that what they have to say is really a truth, a deep truth, or an important or significant, all of a sudden my hair starts to stand on end. Like I get goosebumps, this feeling of goosebumps. Like actually, as I'm talking with you now, I'm starting to feel them rise up. But I happened to pick up a book this morning I like very much, Christian Northrup. She's a wonderful gal, doctor, and she has a book called Goddesses Never Age. And I opened up a page. I just opened it up today, and the title of this little chapter is called Goosebumps and Inner Knowing.
Perfect.
All right. So just like that, that's how it shows up.
Yes.
And she spoke of exactly what I'm like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. And often also that sense of inner knowing, that women have a sense that has often been put down or denied. Yes. How can you prove that to me? It's like, I can't prove it to you. I just know.
I completely, I wanted to jump in because I so agree with you. And I just remember as a new mom, and I've spoken about this many times on other episodes of our podcast, but as a new mom, as you're talking about the inner knowing and this kind of internal intuition that almost feels primal in a way, like sometimes something will bubble up and you're sort of like, what, huh? Where did that come from? But it just really resonates as truth. I think what's so hard for new moms is that there's so many people in their lives, whether it's family, hospital staff, nurses, doulas, whoever, husband, wife, whatever, that maybe say to them, no, this is the way to do it. No, this is the way to do it. No, your baby needs this. You need that. And I think along with what you just said about how women's intuition has sort of been pushed down for many, many years, I also think as a new mom, my experience was that no one cared about my inner intuition. No one never asked me. One person, my therapist, after I had my first baby, was the only person that said to me, Melissa, what do you think? How do you feel?
Great. Yeah. It's true. And I had that experience as well when I was giving birth to my first child. And I wanted to do a home birth, but I didn't. And I went to the hospital. And my doctor knew everything that I wanted, but he was out of town. And all of his colleagues did not know exactly my wishes. And they just wanted to rush that pregnancy along. And I said, no, they wanted to rush the delivery. And I kept looking at them. I'm like, no, they wanted me to get on this drug and that drug. And I'm like, I looked at the nurses. I'm like, do I need this? They're like, no, you're doing great. Wow. You're doing great. I'm like, thank you.
Yes.
And, I did end up doing it my way. And they ended up, my doctor came back to town. I had to tell him the story, and he apologized to me.
Wow.
But I know I was fortunate in that, but they didn't want to listen,
Right.
and, I was so grateful that I had the support of these actually women nurses, could be men too, but women nurses, they're like, no, you're doing great. You're doing fine. You're fine. I mean, so much so, Melissa, that the doctor said, I want this woman written down as an uncooperative patient.
Wow.
I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, yeah, you just do that. That's fine.
Right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Fine. Go. Just leave now, please. Let me just be in labor.
Right. And I think it is such a hard line between the two things I want to say. There's a hard line between, if you're in a hospital, you understand you have to play by their rules. They have their rules and they have them for whatever reason they do. And, I want to be respectful of that. But I also think it's so swung in that way that for me, what I was longing for, and I still in moments long for this, is like this, and I know you're going to resonate with this as soon as I say it, but this wise elder.
Yeah.
I longed for this wise elder to come and just take my hand and sit with me. And after I had my children, just allow me to cry and sob and grieve, the birth that I didn't have and all the other things. And it just wasn't present.
Yeah, I do resonate with that. Yeah. And I wish I could hold your hand. Oh, that's so sweet. I love it. But it's true. And that's why I was so grateful to have these women. Is there a problem here? Because I can't really know.
Right.
And she's like, no, you're doing fine. I was like, oh, thank you. Just thank you.
So what can we tell women, I'm just thinking of like women that are listening to this that are, about to give birth or that looking for, the best care provider for them. And, life is going to happen where doctors are out of town or emergencies come up, situations around birth are going to happen. So what would you suggest for a mom that's sort of in that situation?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I found myself in that situation the next time around. And so my next child, what I did, I understand that. And I don't know that I felt so comfortable doing it at home, but I wanted to have everything in place. So I chose to go to a birthing center. The birthing center was connected with a hospital. There were nurse midwives. I want to have everything in line so that I want my baby to come out healthy. I'm new moms, you all want that. And you also want to do what feels right. So I think it just means you have to investigate because there's so much out there. You have to investigate, be willing to go and talk to people, be willing to go and see what your options are. And then when you get a good feeling about it, this brings us back to it. Trust that. Trust that. Hear from others who have been to that resource. And, you and I spoke about this, that there's, a whole new world out there. I didn't have the internet. I did not have the wealth of information available to me that that young mamas have now. And what a gift that is. We have the internet, it's, like the big web into consciousness, but it's a big web into information and a big web into connecting with other people that is available. So use it, use that information that's there. We don't want to get lost in it, but it is also a great gift.
It's like the Buddhist practice, I think, or I see it that way. And as sort of, really getting clear about what you want, trusting the inner knowing, following that, and then using wise action to really, investigate, talk to people, do your homework so that you feel empowered, that you feel like, actually, no, this is not what I planned for. And tell me why. If you're going to give me Pitocin, if you're going to make me lay on this bed on my back, if you're going to, put me in a C-section, as long as there's time, obviously, just tell me why. Let's just have a chat with me, even if it's brief.
That's right. Exactly. And don't be afraid to speak up for yourself.
Right.
I hear so many people, friends of mine, family, as they get older and they go to a doctor and I'm like, well, did you ask this question? Oh, I didn't ask that question. Did you ask it? I'm like, okay. All right. And I recognize that I ask the questions.
Yeah.
Ask the questions.
Yes.
And let them be answered, and then make your decision and trust again. It comes back to, okay, dare to trust, check in. And then we go back to inner knowing. How do you know? And how do you not, when you know that things don't feel right, what's that feeling like in your body? The body's a great resource. Do you get a knot in your stomach? Does your heart begin to palpitate? Does your neck get tight? I don't know. But if you're paying attention, you do know. You do know something doesn't feel right here, and your body's responding. And then when something does feel right, there's another way. Like, how does that show up? I get goosebumps, or I feel just really joyful. Or, we all have to figure that out. But again, it takes pay attention. Pay attention to yourself, Get to know yourself, in those moments. And then get time for yourself. I think it's so important. And whether you're practicing meditation or yoga or just walks in nature, find some way so that there can be quietude, because we can really listen in that way. And I really do ask. I get into a moment of life and what do I need to do now? Or what do I need to know now? Like, what's needed now? And I ask those questions and then listen, because I do believe there is a voice inside of us. There is a voice of wisdom that will always come and tell you what you need. Those are wonderful moments. Also, take out your journal. What do I need to know now? Like, what do I need to know in my life? And then it's like you're calling in the voice of that elder, that wise elder that lives right inside you, right there with you. And that, we are always channeling that if we allow ourselves.
Yes.
We really can. So, watch how your life's guided in that way, and take time. That's what practices are there for. Not just for the sake of practice, but for helping us to have an experience of ourself beyond the chatter of our mind.
And it is such a practice. It's one of those things where I remember, for meditation, when things would hit the fan, I would sort of say, okay, now I'm going to start meditating. Like, this is where I start. But it was sort of triage versus, when I was sort of preparing to give birth, and especially my second time around, I was like, you know what? I'm just really going to take time to really cultivate some of these practices before I go into triage moment. And by triage, I mean, you're in labor, yes. You're in the middle or the heat of a situation, or you're dealing with family, like whatever it is, you really have to take the time and carve out that time to really get to know you, to get quiet within yourself. And as you said, people find that so differently. For me, I'm a very body sensory organized person. So I know when something's not feeling right, I sort of feel a gut, something in my gut, and my stomach kind of feels cramped or tight. And if, I sort of get a knowing out of nowhere, it doesn't feel very confusing. It feels very clear. And I sort of think like, whoa, could it be that clear? Am I that clear? Okay, yes. And I know myself that, yep, this is what I need to do.
Yep, I totally get that. I've had those moments more than once in my life, and there are big ones, like they happen sometimes in big ways. And so I encourage everyone. And it's true, Melissa. It's not just doing it in the moment of crisis, in that way. It doesn't have to be crisis, a labor is not crisis, but it's not the time when you're going to just start to learn how to meditate while you're in labor.
Right. I couldn't even imagine.
Right. But that's it. We have to tread the path, during the easy times. Do it when it's easy, so that you're kind of building, you're strengthening that muscle,
Yeah. And I think what's so hard, Brahmani, which kind of brings me to another question I had for you, which is, I know with a lot of my clients, when they start to get clear within themselves, it's sort of like, oh my God, a celebration. Isn't this amazing? You're getting really clear. You're getting to really trust yourself. You're getting to find what your voice sounds like. And then it's sort of like, oh no, but now I have to move into the world and I'm sort of different than I am. And, my family may not like that, or my friends that I've sort of gone along with may not like that, or my care provider, now that I know a little bit more about myself and I'm learning to trust that and I'm getting the courage to say something about it, they may fight back or, kind of push back a little bit. And so I'm curious for you, if you have a sense of like how to help women, when people sort of disagree with their knowing or their feelings, like how do you handle that?
That's a good one, right?
Yeah.
Because we're going to face that. And so it's been a process over the years. And I think the thing that I've really learned that is important, number one, stand in yourself. What you believe, but own it. In other words, we're not going to I don't have to put it out on anyone else. And it's, clear, conscious communication using things like I statements, this is the way I feel. And not because of you, but because of me, or this behavior happens in you and I feel this way. So I have this knowing, and it makes, me kind of trust that this is the direction I'm moving in. I feel different, and it's going to feel a little different for you, perhaps, but this is true for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what's coming to me is, there's a saying in the Buddhist community, my family hates it when I'm a Buddhist, but they love it when I'm the Buddha.
That is so awesome.
It's good, right? So I guess my point is, I have to be careful. I mean, in the beginning, when we're so excited, all we want to do is tell everybody,
yes.
sort of, but it can be a little preachy,
mm-hmm.
What they have to do, or just be it instead of just be it. And that's the greatest teaching for those around you. Just be who you really are. And if that feels like a more loving presence, or even someone who's willing to stand up for themselves, be that too, in the most loving way, in the most loving way. And I think that's important, because when we get triggered, it's going to happen to us. How do I want to, stop, take a breath, just stop for a moment. If you feel yourself triggered, stop, take a breath, and think about how it is I want to communicate this, and you know what? People may not agree with you. Yeah. And you don't have to make them agree with you. That's the other piece. They don't have to agree with you.
Right.
And I've often found myself, why don't we just agree to disagree here? And I'm fine with that. I can be fine with that. It's a lot less pressure.
It is.
And
it brings me back, as you were talking, I'm also thinking about, self-love and compassion. I'm thinking about, what's the meditation, the self-love, the heart mantra, what is it called?
It's called, that's good. It's called loving kindness meditation, yes. Or the metta meditation.
Yes.
Which is, there are a few things around that. Number one, it's beautiful, and the benefits, I wish I had them in front of me. The benefits, like the one will be loved, Davids will love them, angels will love them, you'll sleep better, you'll wake better. All these things that if they were ever a prescription, you take them in an instant, right? So the metta are loving phrases, right? And it's really about, actually, it was a practice given, I believe, by the Buddha to his monks as they went out into the forest. And so it was a way of protecting themselves. But they begin with themselves and wish well for themselves. So there are traditional phrases, but very simply, may I feel safe, may I feel happy, may I feel healthy and strong, may I live with ease. And then it's like, wow. And then we get to feel, I don't really feel safe, or I don't feel happy. And then can we hold ourselves with kindness with that? But may I feel safe, may I feel happy. And we wish that for ourselves, and then we grow the practice to wish it for others, so that it's said to be, loving kindness is like a gentle rain. It doesn't have a bias. It doesn't choose who it rains upon. It rains with equanimity. And so it is a mantra, right? And it's just a practice, and you repeat those phrases over and over. And the beauty of any kind of mantra practice is that we're actually replacing, the mantras that we usually have in our minds, like, I don't like this, I'm no good at this, I can't do this, I don't like this. Those kinds of negative, self-defeating thoughts that just run in a person's mind. And so if we start to tread the path of, may I feel happy, or may you be happy, may you know peace, may you feel safe, suddenly it replaces the other things. And I find that these phrases arise for me all the time, when I'm all of a sudden I think about someone, or I'm startled by something, and I watch my mind actually, guys, like, okay, may they be happy, may they be happy. because that's really what we wish for ourselves and others. And so it starts to replace those phrases that don't serve us, right, with something that is much more heartfelt and grows that part of our brain, right? We're learning a lot of things about the brain, and it's, what's it called? Plasticity. It's called thank you. Help me, though, the whole word. Anyway.
Neuroplasticity?
Yes. Neuroplasticity, yes. And so we can change that. We can change that with simple practices like this, because there are different parts of the brain that get triggered. So we want to grow that, and this way of self-love and compassion, wishing ourselves well. Wow, what if you woke in the morning and took a few moments to just wish yourself well? Before I start this day, may I feel safe. May I feel happy. May I feel healthy. May I live with ease. And you do that for a few minutes. It changes the way the day starts.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I remember, as you were taking me back, I remember sitting with Jack Kornfield when he would do his Monday night meditations in San Francisco. I'm sure he still does them, but he would guide us through a meditation, and we'd get to, can you have some compassion for yourself? Can you have some compassion for others? Think of somebody that you love. Can you send them well-being? And then we get to the point where it was, and somebody that is challenging, can you send them love? Can you send them, happiness and health? And the whole room would sort of, you could just feel the energy kind of shift to this, like, oh, do we have to,
Exactly.
But that is the practice.
Everyone but you.
Right, exactly. I'm a very loving person, but not to you.
Right.
But that is the practice completely.
That's right. And, it works when you walk down the street. If someone passes you, you make a connection in your own mind. You could just go, may you be happy. You don't have to go up to them, but yeah.
I love that, walking to work in the morning. I go to work in New York City very, very early. I see so many homeless people laying on the ground, and I just feel so helpless a lot. And, I think, whether you're a mom with a baby in the NICU, or you're a mom dealing with a difficult nurse, or you're having a difficult interaction in a hospital or home or wherever you are, I think this practice can be so helpful just to, quietly just send wishing well to others.
I know. I love that practice. And then we can take that another step. So there's another practice. I don't know if you know it, Melissa, the practice of Tonglen. Which is the practice of sending and receiving. So in a way, it's like exchanging yourself with another. So, there's a whole practice, but then the one that I find most useful is Tonglen on the spot. So, and when you SMID, you see the homeless people, and we have a lot of that everywhere, right? And I don't want to feel separate. I was like, oh, I don't want to feel pity. I'm like, whoa, this is painful, but I also don't want to turn away from it. And so Tonglen is willing to feel the discomfort. In fact, breathe in the discomfort. Be willing to feel that pain. But then the breath out is breathe out a little ease for yourself and the other. So it's not like breathe it in and wash it away. No, I'm breathing it in. I'm willing to feel. And I'm breathing out a little ease for you and for all the people that suffer, for myself, for you, and all. So suddenly, I'm not separate. I'm willing to feel this. And that practice, and it's the same for joy. If you see joy, like, oh, breathe that in,
Yes.
Don't miss those moments either, because life's just not all about suffering, but I don't want to miss the joy that I see, when I'm with my grandchild, and I had them this weekend at the county fair, and they were up and flying on this trampoline, and I'm like, oh my God, don't miss that joy. Don't miss the joy of a sunset, So breathe that in too, and send that to all beings. But, the one that is hardest is when we see suffering. And, that's the path, right? The Buddhist path of the Bodhisattva, until all suffering remain, may I remain. So I'm willing to be here. Yeah, but we're going to find that. And if you're a parent or a grandparent, which I am now, we see our kids and we see our grandkids and we see those near us, there's pain. And it's not just about wiping away the tears. It's about willing to feel that they're struggling right now. And it's not, I don't have to take that away. I'm going to, be willing to feel what you feel. That's about empathy, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm willing to feel what you feel. And I'm going to bring out a little ease for your heart and for my heart in that.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting time that you said that, because I think over the last couple of weeks, whether it's podcasts I've been listening to or conversations I've had, and I've known this, through psychotherapy school and all of that, but I've really just deepening into the practice and sharing it a lot with clients that the deeper we are able to sit with our own pain, the deeper we can be with others' pain.
Yes.
And not have to change it or pity, but really just to feel into, it's not going to kill me. It's intense at times, but, it means that I have a wide open heart, and bless those people that walk on the world that have that,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it lets us feel more connected. And that's really what we want in our life. My dear friend and mentor, Sylvia Boorstein, always says, we're communal people, we're tribal people, we do well in the company of others. So I say to you and to all young moms, find your tribe, find the ones that we connect to, because it makes a difference. We know we're not alone. It lifts our hearts, and it lifts our hearts to also hear, others are having something similar to me. I don't feel so separate. So I think it's important, just like you're doing this right now, you're reaching out, you're letting people know that they're not alone. And as women, we're not alone, and we have each other. We're there to watch out for each other.
I love that. Such a beautiful way to end, Brahmani. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I know, just even hearing you talk, my whole body relaxes and I take a deeper breath, and it was just really beautiful.
Thank you, sweetie. It's been a joy, really. I love sharing this. It lifts my heart as well. I'm in a different stage of life than you, and maybe a few steps I've lived my life. And if anything I've done can be of service to others, then it's been a good life.
Wonderful. Well, how can people get in touch with you, Brahmani, that want to, maybe see what you have to offer? I know you do so many awesome retreats and trainings. So how can they get in touch with you?
Thank you. So my retreats and trainings that I often lead with a dear friend and fellow yogi are at journeyintoyoga.com. And I have a personal page on there for some personal retreats that I lead. And if anyone wants to reach out by email and I'm happy also, I love to do private work on the phone, counseling, mentoring, help you see where you are in your life. So my email is brahmyoga, BRAHM yoga @AOL.com. And so AOL right away dates me, and there you go.
I have an AOL as well, so don't worry.
There we go, and I'm going to stand strong in it.
Thank you so much, Brahmani.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. It was a joy.
Thanks so much for joining me today with my conversation with Brahmani. The most that stood out for me, there were so many pieces that stood out for me in this conversation, but what I really loved was the quote she gave, "Live your life as it's an experiment." To me, that just gives me way more permission to make mistakes, to do or say the wrong thing, and maybe just to be compassionate with myself and those around me. It was a great reminder for myself around the self-compassion and the metta meditation. And remember, if it's hard to do for yourself, there are many great resources out there that can help guide you through some of these meditations. One of my favorite is Dharma Seed, DHARMA Seed, SEED.org. It's free, and they have many, many amazing teachers on there that can do guided meditations and give talks. So thanks so much for joining us. And to get our show notes and more information, go to www.honestmamas.com/episode 18. Also, join our community on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/Honest Mamas Community, where a lot of these conversations will continue.